All right, well, hey y'all, and welcome to this edition of History Highballs, Fashionable Millinery. My name is Stacy, and I handle adult education here at the museum. So whenever you join us for one of these History and Highballs programs, you and I get to virtually hang out together and listen to some incredible stories about North Carolina places and people and what makes our state so special. If you enjoyed tonight's program, we invite you to head over to the museum's website, ncmuseumofhistory.org, where you can learn more about our upcoming programs, exhibits, and digital resources. This is also where you can find information about joining our North Carolina Museum of History Associates. Our associates and foundation provide crucial funding and support to the museum, which, in addition to many other things, helps make programs like this evening's program possible. We would like to also thank those of you who donated funds towards this evening's program. We continue to do our best to keep our programs free to attend, but there are costs associated with keeping our series going, and we just want to thank you all so much for your continued support of the museum. A few quick housekeeping items for this evening. We ask that you please keep your mics muted throughout the entirety of the program, and to please type any questions that you have for our guest speaker into the chat function located at the bottom center of your screen. At the end of our program, our intern Savannah will ask our speaker as many of your questions as time allows. So it's my honor to introduce and welcome this evening's speaker, Katie Allen, founder and milliner of Lifted Millinery. Taking inspiration from vintage aesthetic with a nod to contemporary styling, milliner Katie Allen creates one-of-a-kind fine hats and headpieces. Katie's background includes a BA in costume design and technology, as well as extensive work in regional theater, independent film, and antique garment repair and reproduction. Prior to launching her millinery label, Lifted, Katie spent years constructing bespoke garments and accessories for private clients. Her love of theatricality and vintage materials have combined to bring a unique offering to North Carolina's fashion scene. Lifted millinery pieces are handcrafted with traditional and contemporary millinery techniques gathered over a lifetime of study in garment and accessory construction in Katie's studio in Garner, North Carolina. Limited edition seasonal collections are released each year, spring and summer, and then autumn and winter. Bespoke orders are always welcome, and great care is taken to realize the client's vision for the finished piece. Lifted Millinery has traveled the globe from Ireland to Italy to the Philippines and has been seen at various high-profile events, including the Kentucky Derby, Ireland's Rose of Tralee Festival, and the Today Show coverage of the royal wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Just wanted to start off by saying hi, I'm Katie. I'm in my studio here in Garner, North Carolina, just a little south of Raleigh. Thank you all for coming out. I know I have a few friends that messaged me saying they were coming, so hi everybody, thank you so much. Before I get into what millinery is and different aspects of it and how we do what we do, what I would like to do is just give you a little overview of me and how I got into millinery. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Put it in presenter view. Okay. Can everybody see that okay? All right. So the beginning. So as a small child, I grew up on a farm in rural Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley, and we had cattle and turkeys, but not very many hats. I was always obsessed with antique garments, vintage clothing, and the picture down there at the bottom is of my birthday when I requested nothing but a hat from my relatives for my birthday. So I was obsessed with hats from the get-go, but I was told that millinery is not really a career. People don't do that anymore. So I thought, oh, okay, all right, fine. But I was still obsessed. I was fed a steady diet of Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, and I obsessed over Hello Dolly and Irene Malloy's hat shop, and I just thought it was the most wonderful thing. Growing up, my family never threw anything away. My family's family members never threw anything away. So we had attics and spare bedrooms and closets stuffed with vintage clothing. I still have several family members' wedding dresses. I have garments from my family going back into the 1800s. We literally do not get rid of anything. My attic is kind of, it's overwhelming. But they always let us play dress up in those clothes. And I was just fascinated by it. I was fascinated by the textiles. I was fascinated by the craftsmanship and just the styles of times gone by that you didn't see worn very much anymore. My cousin Lindsay and I, she's the taller one, we always had a lot of fun dressing up in the vintage clothing from family members. Also, as a teenager, I was very into living history. We had a wonderful, still have a wonderful museum in the Shenandoah Valley called the Frontier Culture Museum. And it brings over various farms from Europe and across America to show how various countries in Europe and also settlements in Africa were blended to create the culture that is today in America. And so you can visit each working farm. And I was lucky enough to get an internship as a young teenager and then later a part-time job growing up. And that had a huge influence on my love for textiles and history as well, because as time went on there and you worked there for a while, they encouraged you to participate a little bit in the construction of some of the garments. So I remember us doing blackwork embroidery on coifs from the English farm, which was about 1692 in the Jacobean era. And I learned how to hand stitch flat felled seams on my stays there. And it was just a wonderful introduction to historic textiles. And you can see me bleeding calves and harvesting flax. So then, since I couldn't make hats as a career, so I said, well, what can I do that combines everything I like? I like history, I like textiles, I like costumes, I like vintage clothing, I like hats. Oh, theater. I always loved theater. I participated in theater in high school, and costume design seemed like the perfect way to blend everything that I love together. So I attended Shenandoah University in Winchester, Virginia, went to their conservatory and got my degree in costume design and technology. And so I learned basic millinery there in college, and throughout work in regional theater, various independent films and the like. You just gain more and more knowledge as you go and experiment and try and fail again. And finally come out with a little bit of confidence. And so I ended up working in regional theater for quite a while after college. And then when the economy sort of turned south in about 2007, I got what I call a real world job. I was a salesperson for Otis Elevator Company, and I sold elevator maintenance. And while my coworkers were wonderful, elevator maintenance was not my forte. And to keep my sanity, I took private commissions and did work for several theaters in Wilmington and some independent film over hire. And it just kept boiling down to millinery. What people needed was a hat to go with their outfit. And that was the one thing that they couldn't find, whether it was modern, historic. So I started taking on more and more millinery commissions, learning a little bit more as I went. And it just finally got to the point where one day, one of my friends who owns a vintage shop there that I still sell my millinery through looked at me and she said, just start a business, just do it, just start a business. And I did, I took that leap, and it has been growing little by little ever since then. And that wonderful friend who encouraged me is still a wonderful friend today and still sells my pieces. And it's been a great journey. So without further ado, Sorry, I almost forgot. Here are a few of the costumes that I did. Used to do a lot of historic reproduction and fantasy. So I did a lot of textile work and garment construction even before I did millinery. And the two sort of lend themselves to each other. You learn a lot. So what is millinery? The dictionary defines it as the creation of hats and headpieces from design to manufacturing. So the term is most associated with women's hats, but milliners also make headwear for men. It's not mutually exclusive. And there are men who are milliners, there are women who are milliners. And so hats started out as protection for your head, but as we evolved and we desired to assert individuality, hats became status symbols and forms of self-expression. And milliners don't just make a hat, we make a very finely crafted custom textile sculpture for your head, if you will. You may not be familiar with historic milliners, but you are undoubtedly familiar with their work. Arguably the first milliner to achieve superstardom was Rose Burton, milliner to Marie Antoinette. Her work helped Marie define the style of the era. And it's hard to think of the queen without images of the frothy, towering confections perched on highly powdered and coiffed hair. Even a functional hat today helps to shape the identity of the wearer, be it through style, pattern, level of practicality, or even by the wearer's upkeep of it. So clothing makes a first impression, and hats are a front and center garment. History versus contemporary. So originally, in about the 1500s, that's the first record. That's the first recording we have on hand of the term milliner or some derivative of it being used. It's originally known as milliner or milliner, meant native or inhabitant to Milan. It evolved from a reference to the merchants from Milan who specialized in fine dress goods and cutlery. And even then Milan was also a destination for fine quality goods and textiles. So originally the term was associated with men. Fast forward to the 1700s, the term milliner was widely used. First official record being in 1730 in The Guardian. By the 1800s, it had evolved to a predominantly female occupation for women's hats, hatter being attributed to males for men's headwear. And then from the late 1800s on, men and women practiced the art of millinery. Now, it was probably that gendered delineation between men and women simply because the styles were so very different. Men's hats had very specific shapes and styles. Women's hats had very specific shapes and styles. And you didn't really see people, there was no gender neutral. So it was a very gendered term then. But you fast forward a little bit more into the 1900s, and we start seeing the genders mixing. And so millinery and hatters, you start to see people of both genders wearing products from both milliners and hatters. So milliner versus hatmaker. And I just kind of want to put a disclaimer on this because a lot of people say, well, what's the difference? Well, there is a slight difference, but today it seems like the lines are becoming more and more blurred. But a milliner is typically associated with female headwear. We deal in both fine custom and ready to wear as well. We incorporate traditional and modern techniques as well as contemporary materials. So we work in felt, buckram, straw cloth, thermoplastics. Lots of different cutting edge materials are always coming on the scene. We will experiment with just about anything. Styles are only limited by the imagination. They can run from fedora to hugely elaborate fascinator and include their theatrical milliners who also build headwear for stage and film. Some famous contemporary milliners include Philip Treacy and Stephen Jones and Rachel Trevor Morgan. You if you have followed the royal family or seen a royal wedding, you have likely seen many designs of theirs on royal attendees. A hat maker is typically associated with men's headwear. They deal in multiples with wide ranges of size runs, predominantly known for felt and straw work in classic styles like fedora, cowboy, pork pie, etc. It has tended toward unisex appeal in today's society, and famous contemporary hat makers include Stetson, Gorin, and Akubra. So both are excellent sources for high quality headwear, and both require years of training and experience to make a quality hat. So why are handmade hats? Whoops, let me go back. Oh, hang on a second. There we go. Why are handmade hats better? So as with anything that you have, grab a hat for an example. If it's made by hand, we touch every single little piece of it from beginning to end. There is a person with eyes on it, touching it, making sure that every stitch is in place from beginning to end. It's not made on an assembly line. We don't buy pre-made hats and trim them or glue flowers on. Everything that you see here was shaped and sculpted by a milliner. Sorry, it's a little dark. So there's also the possibility of customization. Have you ever tried on a hat in a department store and it didn't quite fit right? Well, that is because just like no person is the exact same size, no head is the exact same size as another. If you want a proper fitting hat, you need to have a hat fitted to your head size. And a little bit later on, I'll show you how to measure around to find that. Handmade hats are more sustainable. Obviously, if it's just one person working on it, we're not generating a lot of waste. Milliners do use a lot of vintage materials, a lot of antique materials. Our tools, while we do have tools newly made for us, we also can use the antique and vintage tools as well. Many of our materials, such as felt, are sourced from the food industry, where the animal fur would normally go to waste. It does not go to waste. It is turned into felt and used to make the hats. You also have Cinnamay straw cloth, which is a straw fiber from the abaca banana plant, and it is hand woven and is a sustainable material as well. And you'll see that a lot in spring and summertime hats, the light straw ones. And in a little bit, I'll show you some of that as well. It supports the local economy. So obviously everything, if you buy a hat from me, you're keeping your profits, or you're spending your money local. But at the same time, you're also supporting the small businesses that supply us. As millinery is a heritage craft, we don't have a lot of suppliers. We can't just go down to Michael's or Joann's and pick up what we need. They don't sell it. The people that do sell it are small businesses here in the US and around the world, and they deal mostly in millinery items, and there's just a handful of them. So when you're supporting a local hat maker or milliner, you are also helping to preserve the heritage craft and the people that keep it running. Also, handmade hats have the ability to be reblocked and retrimmed. Nothing you see here is glued on or glued together. There is no glue in this hat. Everything is hand stitched. So let's say you want a different style. You don't want a fedora. Well, you could pop this apart, have a milliner reblock it into something else, give you a domed crown, a pork pie, whatever you want. A lot of milliners take vintage hats that are either a little bit battered around, maybe need a cleaning. They'll take it, they'll clean it, they'll reblock it and turn it into something wonderful and new. And if you have high quality millinery that is not glued together and is made well, you have the ability to do that with your hat. So it's a good investment. and it's an investment that will probably see you through if you take care of it well. And I am sorry, this is not sitting on the head. So the next slide. One of the things that, like I just said, we have the ability to reinvent hats. I have customers that bring me hats like this original 60s velour. It sat at the back of the lady's head. It was her grandmother's hat. She inherited it. It sat at the back of her head. It wasn't wired. It was kind of misshapen and lumpy, and it just wasn't a style that suited her. So what we did was I took the entire thing apart, gave it a good light shampoo, and then reblocked it over my hat blocks, which I will also show you in a little bit. We reblocked it into a shape that she liked and in her head size because it was too small for her. Gave it a new hand-stitched brim style that she liked. And then I created a handmade silk flower for it. Millinery flowers are not the same as the flowers that you would pick up in the craft store. Generally, they are made out of natural fibers because the natural fibers accept the heat and shape very well. And they're luxurious. They have a beautiful sheen to them. And so I created this sort of fantasy silk flower rose for her. All petals are individually cut and then shaped with heated tools. The fabric for them, the silk is stiffened and then cut out, shaped, and then each piece is assembled together to create the finished rose. And then this is what the final hat looked like. And since everything is put together by hand and sewn, she can take it apart, or her daughter can take it apart, or whoever ends up with it in the future can have it taken apart and turned into something else. All right, I'm going to stop my share real quick. Okay. And Stacy or Savannah, let me know if you can't see anything that I'm doing, because I'm trying to keep the glare of the lights out of your eyes. So I'm going to try and make sure I do that while making sure you can see everything that I'm doing. So first of all, I'm going to show you the anatomy of a hat. So we have a crown. The highest point is called the tip. And then, sorry, it's so dark. Let me angle this light so you can see this better. And so these indentations in here, this is called a well. These sides are called bashes, sometimes called pinches. And brim, this is a bound edge brim, meaning the wire on the brim is covered or the raw edge is covered. And then we have sweatband and liner on the inside. And the hats are made out of felt, straw, cineme, Cloche shape, which is a thermoplastic. And when milliners and hat makers use something called hat bodies. So when we start to make a hat, our materials look a bit like this. This is a parasisal straw. And as you can see, it's very malleable. It is a woven straw with absolutely no sizing. It does look like it has a bit of a shape, but that's just where they were giving it a good stretch so that it would accept blocking better. This isn't a finished hat, but sometimes you will see these in thrift stores being sold as a finished hat, and we get really excited when we find them in thrift stores. This is a felt hat body. This is a fur felt hat body. And so before hats are blocked, this is what they'll look like. Depending on the milliner and depending on their techniques, they will either size the hats, which is a stiffener, before they block it or after. It just depends on their preferences. Everybody does things a little bit differently. And so in order to shape your hat, you need a hat block. And a hat block is a wooden form that hats are molded over. And for every single head size, you need a different sized block. For every single hat shape, for the most part, you need a different shaped block. There are some blocks called open crown blocks. This is an open crown block, somewhat Frankenstein together. So pardon the tape, but this is an open crown. And this allows a milliner to shape the crown of the hat after they've blocked it over that into whatever they want. So if you want that well and those bashes on the side, deeper, a little bit more shallow, super pinched in, not so pinched in, you can do that with an open crown block and then shape the rest of it by hand later. So that one is probably one of the more versatile. And when you're starting out in millinery, one of the best investments for blocks. Up front. That was the crown. This is a brim block. And sometimes these blocks come with the crown and the brim fully attached, and you would block it all in one, or they come apart and they have a little hole for the crown to sit down in or pass through. And then you would either peg them together. Sometimes there are screws in there. Sometimes they fit tightly and you cover them with a plastic wrap to protect them from your blocking and from your stiffener. And then you would block it all in one as well. And just to give you an idea, it looks like a little bit of a ring. Flip it upside down and you kind of get the idea of what the shape is going to be like. This is for a top hat or a bowler. And if you can kind of get the idea, sort of see the curve right there. I would trim it right here on this curve to get the shape that I wanted. And so you have your block, you have your felt, and maybe you've sized your hat. So next you want to steam, and let me know if you can't see any of this. I'm going to kick on my little steamer here. Give it a second. And I have, this is just a little fascinator block. It has what's called a string groove around it. And this is so that once we have the material pulled over it and pulled down, we can tighten it off and tie it off with a cord so that as it dries, and it's going to shrink up a little bit as it dries. As it dries, it doesn't shrink up and move on the block, it stays in place. And this is one that I've previously blocked, just blocked the crown, not the brim. The brim I'll block later, but I have it tied off so it doesn't move while it's drying. Let's see. Ooh, you know what I did? I think I tripped the breaker. So I'll just show you. My studio up here doesn't like everything plugged in at once. So I'll just show you without steam, because I think I can do it on this one. It's a pretty moldable felt. So this is my blocking cord. Here is my felt hood. Here's my hat block with my covering on it. And what I would do, generally I would steam it, but we don't have power for the steam. So I'll try and do this. And all the milliners watching are going, oh gosh. Try and get it over here and tightened down. See, I'm getting the string into the groove. There we go. Essentially what you want to do is steam allows it to stretch, loosens the fibers, gives a little bit of stretch. It also allows the sizing to really penetrate into the fibers so that you don't get what's called, I mean, we call it like a snail trail or something, where you can see a little shimmer of the sizing on the outside. If you get it really good and wet and steamed, you won't get that snail trail on it. Almost got it. Okay. So you can see it's not pulled and stretched as tightly as I would want it because the steam would do that better for me. But you can see I've got my string and the rope line. And with stiffener and steam and heat, this would be stretched out. The fibers would have accepted the stiffener. And I would just leave it to dry overnight, or you can put it in the oven. Some people bake theirs on a baking sheet. And if they're in a hurry, it's a good way to dry things faster. And then you would pop it off, cut it maybe right here. You don't want to cut it on the line or up higher. You need a little bit of something to fold under. And then you cut it and pull it off and end up, this is cinnamon, end up with a little shape like this. And you can see that little extra edge you would use to turn under. Then you might add a little ribbon around there to cover the raw edge so that it's not irritating to your head and it just finishes it off nicely. Let me show you. Cinnamon as well. So this is the cinnamon I was telling you about. It's a woven straw cloth. It's a straw fiber from the abaca. It's an abaca fiber from a banana tree. It's woven in the Philippines predominantly. And it looks and feels a bit like window screen when you get it on a roll. We buy it in large rolls. You buy it in yardage like you do fabric. It's very popular now. I think it started to become very popular for women's hats maybe in the 90s, 80s, 90s. But it already has a stiffener on it, or at least some of it comes with a stiffener on it. And so you just give it a little water, spray away from my hats. So just like any textile, or woven textile, it's going to have a warp and a weft. So if you pull it on the straight of grain, you're not going to get any stretch. If you pull it on the bias, you get stretch. And it's that bias stretch going over the hat block that helps shape this. So anyone who sews knows that the bias is your friend. It takes just a minute for it to soften up, but you can see how it's become a little bit less stiff now. It's a little bit more moldable, slightly tacky because it has that sizing on it, but I would do the same thing with this straw cloth that I did with the felt, which is stretch it over the form. And then for this particular block, not all blocks, but for this particular block, I have a rope line. I can tie it down with my rope line. And as it dries, it will hold that shape. Now you want to do cinnamon in several layers because it is so sheer. One layer would be far too flimsy. I think this one that I have right here is probably about 4 layers. And the nice thing with cinnamon is you can use various different colors to achieve different shades. So this is a nice emerald green, but I wanted it to be a little darker. And if you just blocked several layers of this green, it'd be very vibrant. But if you block, say, a layer of black or something in between, it changes the color. And so even with a small range of colors, a milliner can create a whole different color palette just based on their layering. So it's a really unique material and like I said, very popular. So what I might do if I'm making something besides, say, a fedora, say I'm making a women's hat, a nice special occasion derby hat or something, I might block this little bitty button and I might connect it to a larger brim. Now this is a Brim Block. You can see it has a little bit flat top right here and a gentle slope downward. What I would do is I have blocked several layers of cinema. These are blocking pins. They're holding it down because this does not have a rope line. And it, you know, even if you get it wet and stretch it over it, nothing's going to hold it in place. It's just going to spring back up. So you want to stretch it, block it down, or stretch it, pin it down, let it dry. You want to make sure that the cinema is firmly pressed together, lots of heat and steam. Because if you don't do that, you're going to get little bubbles in your cinema and it's not going to adhere. So you have to be fairly forceful with it. But then what I would do is I would cut it off, attach my crown, and then I could trim it. I would wire the edge, cover it with a binding, maybe ribbon, maybe some more cinema and a bias. Maybe I would just fold and fold. It just depends on how you want to finish the hat. And that's the nice thing about handmade hats is everything's so incredibly customizable. You can, you know, even the slightest little change will change the entire look of the hat. And so no two handmade hats are going to be exactly alike. That's the other nice thing about millinery is no one will ever have your hat if you have a custom made hat. A couple other fun blocks that I use are Fashionable blocks. This one is a fun little dish shape that you can make several different shapes off of. Turn it upside down. Essentially, if you block the whole thing, it would kind of look like a satellite dish on your head. But after you've blocked on it, you can trim the shape down into something a little different and it becomes something a little bit more elegant. And then I would trim that out. Let's see. So the next would be after I pop this off the block, pop the brim off the block, I would sew them together. And then you would put in what is called a sweatband. And that is this interior band here. And essentially it also, you know, it helps to cover the raw edges, but what it's also doing is giving you your head size. So for your head fit. So you don't want it to be too snug, but you do want it to be a good firm fit. And this head size or sweatband can be in grosgrain ribbon, which is what this one is, or we call it. So it's called grosgrain ribbon or Petersham, depending on where you are. In America, most people refer to it as Petersham. It's a little different from a grosgrain ribbon. It has what's called a sawtooth edge, and rather than the grosgrain ribbon woven edge, and that just allows it to stretch. So when we put it into a head size or put it as a hat band around the hat, what we can do is slightly curve it so that it fits flush around the head. And you don't have any gappage there. You can also get different types of sweatbands. A lot of hatters or men's hats are going to have these nice leather ones. You can also have adjustable head size. You'll see these a lot in retail stores where they have a little tape in there. You'll just go in and you can either draw it in or let it out depending on the fit you need. And these would be for someone who is sending their products to a store where you don't know the head size of the person who might purchase it. So after you set in your sweatband, you're going to move on to the really fun part, which is the trimming part. So for trimming, I mean, it really, the sky's the limit. It depends on what the customer wants. It depends on what you feel like at the time. It might depend in some cases on what materials you have to hand. I find that limitation actually works in my favor. When I have too many options, it gets a little overwhelming and you kind of get choice paralysis, but I do enjoy working with what I have or inventing new ideas. So see, for trimmings, I mean, anything goes. You have ribbons, feathers, flowers, beads, all sorts of different things. And let me start out with the flowers. So the cloche that I showed you that I remade, I made a silk flower for it. And to start with, it just started out like this plain silk yardage, quite flimsy. And I would brush it with stiffener, and it almost makes it feel, I mean, you can see, it doesn't have quite the same drape anymore. It almost feels like paper. It's a little crispy sounding too. And from there, I would cut out my shapes. And there are, you can cut out in individual petals. You can cut out in one flat, like 5-petal floral shape. It just depends on the type of flower you want to make. But for this example I have, I'll show you. These have all been individually cut out. They've also been specially dyed too. These are actually suede, and each petal is wired. And so millinery flowers are quite a bit different from the flowers that you get in the craft store. Like I said, they're made of natural materials: silk, leather, cotton, linen, felt. And they are assembled in a lot of cases by hand. Most of what I use is either made by myself or by one of the flower maker, or they're vintage, made by myself, or made by a flower maker. I think we only have one left in the US now, M&S Schmalberg, and they make gorgeous custom flowers, and they can make anything you want. I just did a trip to New York in September and bought some of their stock. This is velvet, and it's just gorgeous. You can see how they've dyed it to get that lovely gradation, and you're not going to find this in your craft store. These are all handmade too. So I have a little bucket of petals, and it's a lot. And each flower gets assembled like so. You just keep layering your petals together and shaping them to get the desired effect. And so from this silk to the stiffened silk, ended up with these flowers. So that's one of the lovely differences of handmade millinery versus factory made. The flowers are all made by hand, individually shaped. So another trimming that we might do on the hats would be feathers. Now you can put a feather straight on the hat, just like this. It might look nice. But if you pull away some of the down at the bottom, and this isn't even a very nice looking feather. It's got some holes, but we can transform it. That's the wonderful thing that milliners can do. They can transform materials, everyday materials, into extraordinary things. And I just got to look at my time, and I think I should probably wrap this up so we can get questions. But essentially, you see, I stripped off one side of it, and you can go in with your scissors, give it a little bit of curl, and it's just elevated it from a plain feather to something a little bit more extraordinary. So I did want to go over wearing and caring for your hat really quickly. So just a couple things. So how to put on a hat. a lot of people, you'll see a lot of people grab it like this, don't do that. You're going to misshape the well and the bashes here in whatever hat you have. If you pinch it here on the felt, it's going to make it misshapen. If you do that on straw repeatedly, straw is brittle. You're going to start breaking it. So do not grab it up here. Hold it either by the sides or the front and the back and place it on your head. Don't bend the brim. There's a wire in there and you'll kink it. And then when you take it off, rest it upside down, because as you can see, there's a slight droop in this brim. And if I were to lay it on the table like that, it's going to start forcing the brim upward. And over time, it's just going to ruin the shape of the hat. So a hat like this, a fedora like this, store upside down. And then a few, so that's your standard fedora. Other hats are a little different. Fascinators are a little different. Obviously, you have your standard derby hat. Easy peasy, no fuss. Easy to put on and wear. It's not very puzzling. But then you have some slightly different ones. This is, it's called a headband, a bandeau, just depends. It has a little elastic in the back and a comb here underneath. And the way it goes on, the elastic goes behind the nape of your neck. The comb slides into your hair and it just sits like that. And it's easy and light, and it's not going to fall off because of the pressure of the elastic and the comb holding onto your hair. And one of my favorites, fascinators, is the prong technique. This gives a little added extra wire support at the back of your head. So when your head moves, the hat's going with it no matter what. This is a headband, wired headband with an elastic at the back, and you would comb your hair over it, and there would be that wire support that you would cover with your hair in the back. Let's see. Let me go back to my screen share really quick and run through these slides I have for you very quickly. New questions. So what does a milliner get up to? I belong to a lovely organization called the Milliners Guild. It's about 54 plus members all across the US, all milliners. You can go to millinersguild.org to find out more and find out where maybe your local milliner is. We put on a lot of wonderful events. We recently did for the 2020 election, we did a retrospective Solidarity and Style celebrating 100 years of women's suffrage. And I was proud to create a hat based on suffragist Anna Julia Cooper, who was a Raleigh native. We had a recent event celebrating the, I guess, the Great Gatsby coming into the public domain, and all the upcoming films and adaptations that will be based off of it. And I enjoyed creating a hat for that as well. This is, I don't know if you can see it. Let me share my screen, you can see it better. This is the hat I created for that. And it is made out of sewn straw braid in the shape of women's hair. It is all hand sewn, as you can see. I haven't lined it yet, but you can see all the stitching inside there. It's all entirely hand sewn. We are currently putting on a Best Ben Humor and High Design competition, where milliners from around the globe have entered hats as a part of this competition. I think we had 84 entries. It was judged by world-renowned milliner Stephen Jones, and you can go to the website to learn more about the competition. It's a celebration of Best Ben, who's a famous mid-century American milliner who designed wonderfully high-end whimsical hats. And this competition is a celebration of his work. So go to millinersguild.org to learn more about that. Milliners do continuing education as well. Participated in Millinery Meetup, which is a wonderful education event for milliners. It brings both domestic and international milliners to Airmont, Tennessee for a 1-week intensive of various courses. So we can learn different techniques from each other. A couple of my favorites are, let's see, Best Overall Hat for Millinery Meetup 2018. It's one of my favorite hats that I created for the competition. I was very honored to receive Best Overall Hat for it. Melbourne International Millinery Competition Top 8 in 2019. Melbourne International Millinery Competition joint 3rd place in 2020. That was for recycled headwear. That was a ton of plastic bottles and folders made into small sequins and sewn to the wire frame. Then Rose of Tralee. That was a favorite hat created. And then the Today Show coverage of the royal wedding of Harry and Meghan. I did not know that it was happening when I sent the Fascinator off with her, but I was delighted to see that result. And then Milliners Guild did an exhibition at the Met Museum store 2 years ago, where we exhibited hats alongside of, or in conjunction with the opening of Camp Notes on Fashion at the Met Museum. And so this was my creation for that display. And then hats are just wonderful. No day is ever the same. I create ordinary hats, create historic or film inspired hats, bridal, and fantasy. And you just never know what you're going to get from one day to another. And that's just one of the things I love about what I do. And the best part, though, is realizing customers' designs and getting the pictures back at the end. It's always rewarding. Okay. And so I would love to hear questions. I've seen quite a few come in.
Yes, there are a lot. So one of them is, do you personally clean hats? And if not, do you recommend somebody who does that, or do you do that?
I do that. Yeah, I can do that. It depends on the hat. I mean, every hat rehab is going to be a little bit different, and some stains don't come off completely. Some do, but you know, I'm open to evaluating any hat. Yeah, absolutely.
Karen has some original hats from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And are there dealers in the US who buy and sell vintage hats?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. There are a lot of Etsy sellers. Now, I don't know how they go about purchasing them, though. I know there are a couple of my milliner friends on here. I don't know if they could put in comments about the and any sellers that they would know of. If you know of any, put them in the chat.
Tina asked if you ever use metal or plastic hat blocks.
I do. You can use 3D printed plastic. I've blocked off of bowls from the kitchen. I know people that get those fun little baking tins that are shaped in hearts and things like that, and they'll mold over those. It's all about making it work for you, and just, you know, it's problem solving, but you can definitely do that. The drawback is you can't pin into it, so you have to figure out a different way to hold the material against the block while it's drying.
Claire wants to know what stiffener is made from, if you know.
Various different things. There is a PVA solution. I use two different ones. a PVA solution, which is a polyvinyl alcohol granule that I soak in water. So it's non-toxic. I try to use non-toxic whenever possible. Another that I use is gelatin, gelatin-based synthetic gelatin. And then there are some that are, let's see, they're shellac-based, and then there's some chemical stiffeners that are just a little bit more toxic, but all of them, if applied correctly, work really well.
A lot of people want to know the best way to store vintage hats. Should they do it in a hat box or like on a head form?
So what I would recommend is a lot of tissue. Hang on a second. So here's a little hat box. Let me show you this real quick. I have a vintage hat here. So this is again, I chose all the examples to be black. That was not well thought out. This is a 1940s kind of Glengarry style cap. It is felt and it hasn't been stiffened. There's no stiffener in here. So what I would recommend is you put acid-free tissue, acid-free so it doesn't discolor your hat. Pad the hat out in the shape that it's supposed to be, and then cover it in additional acid-free tissue. And then create a nest in your hat box of tissue, just kind of accordion folded, create a little nest to support it. And you're gonna have to use just, a little bit of sense here. Try and not rest it on the crush points of the hat. So depending on the style, just find the way that sits best so as not to misshapen your hat. But yes, I would store it in the box, out of light, out of heat, out of moisture. Heat will warp your hat. Never ever leave your hat in a hot car. Don't get your hat sopping wet. And also brush it. So when you, just like any garment, wool garment, felt garment, when you clean it, you need to get all of the, as much as you can, all of your oils from your body or proteins from dead skin cells, because that's what moths are going to go after. So you want to make sure you're not leaving anything for larvae to feed on, because if female moths find that present in your garment, that's where they're going to lay their eggs, because there's food there. So give your hat a good brush. Any vintage hat, give it a good brush with your hat brush. Store it in your tissue in the box. Don't worry about using mothballs or cedar or lavender. They all off gas. They can all discolor things. Just try and do moth prevention rather than repellents.
Clyde, it wants to know, at what point does a hat become a fascinator? Which I would like to know the answer to that too.
It's a little loosey-goosey, because over here we call them fascinators. They're also called cocktail hats. If you go over to England and you say a fascinator, they're going to think about a little feather coming off of your head. That's essentially what they think of as a fascinator. We call a lot of things a fascinator over here. I guess my answer is there's no really great way to answer that, but I figure when it doesn't sit down over your head, when it can't be, let's see, when you can't just pop it on and have it held in place by just the crown and the head fit, then it becomes what's called a fascinator or even a hatinator, which is a term used for larger scale pieces that may have the illusion of a brim, but it still requires supports to attach. That's my answer. Everyone's a little different. Somebody else might say something different.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Arlene would like to know if you have a favorite material that you use for hats.
Oh gosh. I love working with straw braid, but probably my favorites are silk. And I grew up working with textiles, so I still love getting that yardage in my hands and creating like a brim out of wool suiting. I don't know if you can tell, this isn't felt. This is a wool suiting that I've created into a brim. Making the silk flowers, probably the textiles like silk and wool are my favorites.
We have several more, I think. Okay. Susie asked what kind of stitches and thread you used.
Ooh, all different kinds. My favorite for a very long time was a glazed thread called Highmark, but they stopped making that. It was a wonderful thread that it's very strong, and the glazing keeps it from knotting. But yeah, they don't make that anymore. So really different threads for different things. And all different sorts of stitches. It just depends on what the project requires.
Phyllis is wondering how many hours go into making hats like the black and ivory one that is behind you. I think you picked it up earlier. It was behind you, but I think you just had it closer to the camera a second ago. But I guess how long does it? Yeah, one of those, I guess. So how many hours would go into making one of those?
It depends. Again, it depends on the hat. And it also depends on the milliner's, I guess, work methods. Mine are sort of forced upon me. I have 2 young kids. And so my workday is very broken up. So honestly, I have no idea how long it takes me to make a hat. If I sat down and worked straight through a day, maybe. But yeah, I've had small kids ever since I've done millinery. So I'm honestly not sure how fast I work.
See, Laura wants to know your ratio of machine stitching to hand stitching.
We're gonna probably say 75 to 90% hand stitching. And then for really long, like if I'm making bias trim or something like that, or a very, very long or a wide brimmed edging that I just want to knock out as fast as I can, I'll do it on the machine, but I prefer hand stitching. It's meditative. I enjoy it.
Okay, last question. Julia asked if like hats are ever embellished using paint, and if so, what kind?
Yes, they are. And I know people that use acrylic a lot on the hat. There are textile paints that you can get to paint on hats as well. I personally haven't done it. I've used leather paints on leather before, and I use dye on flowers, and to dye a hat body a different color if I need it. But yeah, I know a lot of milliners that do paint designs on hats, and I believe they use acrylic. And I'm so sorry that I didn't stop in time to get to all these questions, but if you want to email me, I'll answer them.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, so I put your website in the chat and let folks know that they could reach you by going there. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for this awesome behind the scenes look at millinery. I've learned so much this evening. I have a feeling that most of the folks who joined us have learned a lot too. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
And thank you guys for joining us this evening. We hope that if you enjoyed it, you will join us at our next History and Highballs with French Broad Chocolate happening Thursday, February 10th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Until then, have a wonderful evening, and we will see you guys soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Bye.